Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you were there? Maybe you've caught yourself repeating a story you told just a few minutes ago, or you've noticed names and appointments slipping from your memory more often than they used to. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and more importantly, it's not just part of getting older. It's a warning, a quiet knock on the door. And if we ignore it long enough, that knock becomes a breakdown we can't reverse. Let's talk about something we don't like to talk about. The way our own daily habits might be chipping away at our minds, slowly, silently, and dangerously after we hit 60. I know it's not a comfortable subject. No one wants to think about their brain getting weaker or their thoughts becoming foggy. But pretending it's not happening won't protect you. Facing the truth, however, that just might save your brain. And here's the truth. There are 5 habits, common ones we don't even think twice about, that are quietly wrecking your brain. And if you're over 60, those habits can accelerate decline faster than you realize. But the good news? Once you see what they are, you can stop them. You can reclaim clarity. You can take back control. And you can stay sharp, not just for a few more years, but for as long as you're breathing. Let's start with the first habit, and I'll be honest, it's one most people don't take seriously until it's already caused real damage. It's sleep. Or more specifically, not getting enough deep, quality sleep. Now, I'm not talking about just feeling tired during the day. I'm talking about what happens to your brain when you miss out on the deep, healing sleep that your body needs to repair and reset. After 60, your brain becomes even more sensitive to sleep deprivation. That light, broken, restless kind of sleep? It's not enough. It doesn't clean out the toxins. It doesn't let your brain file and organize your memories. It doesn't give your nervous system a chance to recharge. When you don't sleep deeply, your brain doesn't just feel foggy. It literally starts to shrink. Studies have shown that poor sleep is directly linked to faster brain aging, memory loss, and yes, even dementia. Think about that. Each night you toss and turn, or stay up late watching the news or scrolling on your phone, might be another drop in the bucket draining your cognitive health. So, what can you do? Start simple. Create a routine. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, even on weekends. Keep your room cool and dark. Shut off screens at least an hour before bed. And if your mind won't stop racing, try something like soft instrumental music or gentle stretching to wind down. It's not about being perfect. It's about taking your brain seriously enough to treat rest like medicine, because that's exactly what it is. But even if your sleep is perfect, there's another habit that can slowly destroy your brain. And it's something a lot of older adults actually start doing more of after retirement, without realizing it's a trap. I'm talking about isolation. Spending too much time alone. Now, don't get me wrong. A little peace and quiet is a beautiful thing. But when solitude turns into silence, when your days start to pass without real, meaningful conversation, that's when the brain starts to suffer. Social interaction is more than just a way to pass the time. It's how the brain stays alive. It's how we process, learn, challenge our thinking, and stay emotionally grounded. When you go long stretches without connecting to another human being, not just waving at the neighbor, but really talking, sharing, laughing, thinking, it's like putting your brain on pause. Neurons fire less. Emotional resilience drops. Memory starts to fade. Loneliness isn't just uncomfortable, it's biologically toxic. It increases your risk of depression, heart disease, and yes, Alzheimer's. And yet, so many people over 60 find themselves retreating, often without even meaning to. Friends move away. Family gets busy. Mobility becomes harder. And then one day you realize that the phone doesn't ring as often, and you're spending more time with the TV than with people. That quiet can feel peaceful at first. But over time, it becomes dangerous. If this is hitting close to home, please, don't brush it off. Reaching out doesn't have to be dramatic. Call someone today. Join a group. Invite a neighbor for coffee. Volunteer somewhere, even if just for a couple hours a week. Human connection is one of the most powerful things you can do to protect your brain. Now, while we're talking about what your brain needs, there's another silent saboteur that creeps in slowly, often disguised as something normal. And that's sugar. This sugar. It's everywhere. In our morning cereal. In the bread we eat. even in the so-called healthy snacks with the words low-fat plastered across the front. And while most of us know sugar isn't great for our waistline, very few people over 60 realize just how vicious it is to the brain. See, your brain runs on energy, but it's incredibly sensitive to the type of fuel you give it. Too much sugar floods the system, spikes your insulin, inflames your brain tissue, and disrupts neurotransmitters. Over time, that inflammation contributes to brain fog, memory lapses, mood swings, and increased risk of cognitive decline. And here's the kicker. After 60, your ability to regulate blood sugar naturally declines. So even the same amount of sugar you ate in your 40s can be far more damaging now. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. For many older adults, sugar has become a quiet addiction. It shows up in the form of comfort, something sweet after dinner, a little treat with your tea, a reward at the end of a long day. And bit by bit, it rewires your brain to crave more, while starving it of the nutrients it really needs. The answer isn't to become a monk and swear off every dessert forever. But you do need to start noticing. Start reading labels. Start swapping processed snacks for real food, fruits, nuts, dark leafy greens, whole grains. Start small, but start now. Your brain is worth more than a temporary craving. Now that we've talked about sleep, solitude, and sugar, let's keep going. Because while these habits are already doing more damage than we like to admit, there's another one that might be hiding in plain sight. And it's time we bring it into the light. I'm talking about something that pretends to be harmless. Something that seems innocent, maybe even helpful, but over time, it's quietly rewiring the way your brain processes the world. And that is constant passive screen time, the habit of consuming hour after hour of TV, scrolling through your phone, or watching videos that don't truly engage you. Now let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with enjoying a good show or checking in with loved ones online. The danger starts when those screens replace real mental activity. Because when you spend hours simply absorbing content without using your brain to think, react, solve, or create, your mind begins to slow down. And after 60, that slowdown can become permanent. It doesn't happen all at once. That's why it's dangerous. It begins with a little boredom, so you turn on the news. Then another show, then another. Before you know it, the day has slipped by and your brain hasn't been challenged once. You haven't learned anything. You haven't struggled, remembered, debated, or created. You've consumed. And while the body may be sitting still, your mind is quietly withering. The brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, really use it, it starts to shrink. Not metaphorically. Literally. You can see it on scans. And passive screen time is the perfect trap for shrinking brains, especially when it becomes your default way to spend the day. You might be thinking, what am I supposed to do? I'm retired. I don't have meetings or a job anymore. And I understand that. But mental engagement doesn't require a career. It requires intention. Read books that stretch your mind. Learn something new, a language, an instrument, a skill. Do puzzles that make your brain work. Write down your thoughts. Teach someone something you know. Even having thoughtful conversations about life, values, and experiences keeps your neural pathways firing. Your brain was never meant to coast. It was meant to do. And when you stop doing, it starts disappearing. Not because you're old. Because it's being starved of challenge. Now, let's talk about something that hides behind a mask of politeness. A habit that seems harmless, maybe even dignified, but that actually builds stress in the body and clouds the mind in dangerous ways. I'm talking about bottling up your emotions. At this stage of life, you've likely gone through more than most people could imagine. Loss, grief, disappointments, health issues, family changes, perhaps the end of a career. And somewhere along the line, the world started expecting you to just carry all of that quietly. Be the strong one. The calm one. The wise elder who doesn't complain. But here's the problem. What you don't express, you suppress. And what you suppress, your brain stores like poison. Emotional repression is one of the most overlooked causes of chronic stress. And stress, especially long-term stress, is devastating to the brain. It floods your system with cortisol, a hormone that literally eats away at the part of your brain responsible for memory and decision-making. If you've ever found yourself feeling foggy, tired, anxious, or like you're watching your life through a haze, that might not just be age. That might be emotional buildup, traumas, regrets, losses you haven't processed. They don't disappear because you stay quiet. They fester. And they take a toll far greater than any of us want to admit. It's time to stop telling yourself that your feelings don't matter anymore. They do. They always have. And expressing them, safely, thoughtfully, honestly, isn't weakness. It's a deeply intelligent act of self-care. Whether that means talking to a trusted friend, joining a support group, journaling, praying, or even just letting yourself cry when the tears come, those moments of emotional honesty are like spring cleaning for the brain. Letting yourself feel doesn't make you fragile. It makes you real. And it clears up space in your mind for peace, clarity, and focus. Now think about this. We've talked about sleep. We've talked about isolation, sugar, screen time, and emotional repression. Each of these things on their own can slowly destroy your brain after 60. But here's the harsh truth. They don't usually happen in isolation. They feed into each other. You sleep poorly, so you reach for sugar and sit in front of the TV all day. You feel disconnected, so you isolate yourself and stop engaging in conversation. You carry stress without release, and so your body stays in a constant state of quiet panic. And before you know it, you're not just aging. You're declining, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But here's the most important thing I want you to know. It's not too late. Not by a long shot. The brain has a remarkable ability to heal. It's called neuroplasticity, and it means your brain can literally rewire itself, create new connections, and even grow new cells. But it needs you to help. It needs your choices, your discipline, your desire to stay alive in the deepest sense of the word, not just physically, but intellectually, emotionally, mentally. You're not here just to sit on a couch and wait. You're here to keep living, to keep learning, to keep becoming. Because this phase of life, this so-called later season, isn't the end. It's a reckoning. It's when you decide whether you'll fade or rise. And there's one final habit that might be keeping you from rising. It's subtle and it's deadly. But the moment you recognize it, everything can begin to change. Let's take a breath and go there. Because this last habit, it's one that disguises itself as humility, even as wisdom. But underneath, it's a quiet killer of potential. A brain wrecker disguised as a survival strategy. And that habit is giving up on growth. Somewhere along the road, many people over 60 start telling themselves a dangerous lie. I'm too old to change. Or asterisk, what's the point now? Maybe it sneaks in as subtle as, I'll just stick with what I know, or, I've lived my life already. And it might sound reasonable, but deep down, it's surrender. It's resignation. And it slowly tells your brain to stop reaching, stop learning, stop stretching. But the truth is, the human brain is wired to evolve until your final breath. The moment you decide you've seen enough, or learned enough, or done enough, you're not just limiting your future, you're signaling your brain to decay. Neuroscience has proven that engaging in new experiences, things that are unfamiliar, challenging, even frustrating, stimulates the brain in powerful ways. It promotes memory, mood stability, focus, and long-term resilience. In contrast, repeating the same mental patterns over and over with no novelty, that leads to stagnation and eventually cognitive decline. It's not age that robs us of our mental power. It's stagnation. And unfortunately, society often reinforces that. You hit a certain number, and suddenly people stop expecting you to grow. They treat you like a finished product. They say things like, at your age? Or, you should take it easy. Take it easy? You're not done. You're still capable of learning a new language, trying a new hobby, traveling somewhere new, writing your story, mentoring someone younger, starting a small business, picking up photography, gardening, learning how to use new technology, even exploring the world of art, music, or poetry for the first time in your life. Growth doesn't have an age limit. And your brain doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to be curious. That spark of curiosity is like oxygen to your mind. It ignites new connections, wakes up dormant parts of your memory, and gives you something to look forward to each day. something to move toward. But to choose growth, you have to challenge that voice that says, "What's the point?" The point is simple: you are still here. Which means your story isn't over. Which means your brain, your beautiful, mysterious, powerful brain, deserves better than slow decay. It deserves activation. It deserves stimulation. It deserves care. And that's where everything we've talked about comes together. Because when you sleep well, your brain heals. When you connect with others, your brain comes alive. When you cut back sugar, your brain clears. When you limit passive screens and engage in active thinking, your brain strengthens. When you express your emotions, your brain relaxes. And when you keep growing, even just a little, your brain flourishes. That's not just a theory. That's what the science tells us. And more than that, it's what life tells us, when we're honest enough to look at it. You've seen people age with grace, sharpness, energy, and presence. And you've seen others fade too early, their spark dimming not because of illness, but because they gave into habits that slowly starved their brain of the care it needed. The difference between those two paths? It's not genetics. It's choices. Small ones. Repeated daily. So let me ask you, what will you choose? Will you choose to wake up and treat sleep like the medicine it is? Will you fight for connection, even when it feels easier to stay isolated? Will you say no to the short-lived comfort of sugar and yes to real nourishment? Will you replace passive consumption with active engagement? Will you allow yourself to feel, to release, to heal? And perhaps most importantly, will you refuse to stop growing? This isn't about guilt. It's not about being perfect. It's about recognizing the extraordinary power still inside you, and refusing to let it slip away because of habits that no longer serve you. The truth is, there is no expiration date on your mind. There's no rule that says your sharpness has to decline. There's no law that says your best years are behind you. In fact, many people experience the deepest peace, the clearest wisdom, and the greatest freedom after 60. Not because they avoided aging, but because they leaned into it, intentionally, thoughtfully, and courageously. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're 60, 70, 80, or beyond, your brain is still listening, still growing, still fighting for you. Will you fight for it? You have more control than you've been told. And small, consistent actions will take you further than you can imagine. You don't have to overhaul your life overnight. You just have to begin. One habit, one decision, one day at a time. And if this video resonated with you, if it stirred something in your heart or mind, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What habit are you ready to change? What challenge are you going to take on? Let's build a community of strength, of clarity, of thriving minds, no matter the age. If you found value here, give this video a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. There's so much more we'll explore together. But for now, remember this. Your age does not define your brain. Your choices do. And every day, you have the power to choose life, growth, and clarity, starting now. Here's to living your sharpest, strongest, brightest life.